Good morning. Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And I was going to do one of these last week and try to start a trend of like doing certain news items uh, once per week and put them all together and try to have like a cohesive thing here. But I fell sick uh, last week, and only now I've been able to get my voice back. So that had to be delayed a bit. But yeah, this time around I'm going to talk about obviously the ongoing uh, nomination process of our current election season, and how serious or not so serious that really is, given the participants and the certain non-involvement of participants who apparently doesn't need to be involved and still be ahead in their nomination process. Yeah, so within the last week to last night, we went through the Iowa and the New Hampshire primaries. The resulting the result in Iowa was interesting in terms of no matter how much Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis had fought back and forth for that state, Donald Trump, who put in a minimum of effort of campaigning due to his legal issues and or just whatever, uh, outpaced him and royally won that particular contest in Iowa by double digits between DeSantis and Nikki Haley. Last night, Donald Trump won yet again. However, the count between him and Nikki Haley was far closer than Trump would have liked, and certainly Trump's minions would like. I'll go into a little detail on that, especially one of his current gerbils that discussed it on air on whatever news show it was. I didn't quite see the network icon, so I don't know if it was Fox or not. I don't think it was Fox. Anyway, so prior to the Iowa caucus, Chris Christie bows out and doesn't endorse Trump. So at least that's one for him. He bows out because he wanted to. He couldn't see a path to becoming president, and I believe he went to endorse Nikki Haley. I think it was, but he pretty much says he didn't want to help Trump win by further dividing up the pool. So he bowed out, and I think he threw his support with Nikki Haley. After Iowa, Ron DeSantis bowed out. He did this. He did this. One of his speeches prior to him getting out of the race, he said something. He said something to the effect of, of being a Republican. If you will, I'm going to paraphrase this because I'm not quite awake this morning, but he says something to the effect of like if you're a good Republican and you don't kiss the ring, then you would be then Trump would just destroy you, socially or social media wise or whatever. But if you're a worthless Republican and you go and kiss the ring, then you are the greatest person Trump has ever known. So which would be a paraphrased comment that doesn't age well, because when he when he decided to step down from the race, he endorsed Donald Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy also stepped down and immediately went to endorse Trump. Tim Scott, who already did prior, went to support Trump even over his fellow South Carolinian Nikki Haley. Now, Nikki Haley, I find her marginally interesting in this because, like Ron DeSantis, in the earliest parts of this campaign, and I'm doing the air quotes for a reason, the early part of the campaign was that she, like DeSantis, didn't really want to speak too much about Trump. That he was the empty spaced elephant in the debate stage. That they didn't want to really criticize too much. They didn't really want to get out there with him. While Chris Christie, who was going to go down anyway because of his anti-Trump stance, decided to go down in flames, swinging, which is probably the one thing I'll respect about him. But Nikki Haley didn't want to do that. She didn't want to confront Trump too much, and in ways that always made me think of her being very hypocritical whenever she would be ranting about Biden and his connections to China, or whatever connections to China, that she seems to forget that her old boss, Donald Trump, practically hugged Xi Jinping every time they were near each other. That always had a positive thing to say about him, and joked upon, congratulating him on being essentially a dictator for life. That, gee, I wish I could be that. But now that the race is narrowed down, now all of a sudden Nikki has developed the realization that she has to be more and more critical of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, in return, comes out with her true name, and which of course is like, may as well, Nematra, I think. But she goes by Nikki, which is her middle name, and that's her choice. But of course, he'll bring out her name, like it would be Barack Hussein Obama, because so we need to get that other out there. He floated a birtherism bullshit that she is not eligible to be president. Now calling her bird brain, and she is interesting in her current incarnation of her now criticizing Trump. But unfortunately for her, she had to go and say, and I think she did it again last night, that if Donald Trump was the nominee, she would vote for him. She would support him. Now, the last few days, we've seen her taking her shots at Trump. Shots that, if there was any form of integrity in her, then if she fell out of this race, she would not support him. Because if she supported him after the things she says, especially about his cognitive ability, then that would have to make you go, why? Why are you supporting him? And this is going to be kind of the subject of my conversations here. Because as much I'm going to talk about Trump, this isn't really technically a anti-Trump video this time around. This is not the usual TDS, Trump derangement syndrome video, because it's not essentially, my problem this time around is not essentially about him, because that's already established. My problem is now with everyone else around him and whatever motivations they have of how they're supporting him, even though he is in a more severe cognitive decline than Biden is. And before anyone goes, oh, what about Biden? Look back at my videos and notice how I have said repeatedly that Biden was in decline himself. That from one of his debate performances that was really showing that he showed that he was sundowning. Where, when you get to a certain point of the day, for unfortunately some people, especially some people who are elderly, and it's too long in the day, you just lose that train of thought and you're just trying to thought grab. You're trying to get back into some. You're trying to get back into some cognitive reality. The train of thought of what you were going to say. Unfortunately, I'm middle aged and I'm running into that myself. But and I'm not running for president. I know better. But but then you lose it, and so you're just trying to catch anything that sounds like it can make some sort of sense and go, aha, I got this, and I'll go that way. See, that's the thing about with Biden, where it seems to be like his decline is more the sort of the doddering edge of it. And of course, certain news medias go out of their way to try to emphasize this and accentuate that and make that more obvious of Biden through attempts of using out of context, chopped up, edited moments where he looks like he doesn't know where he's going. He's supposed to be over here, or is he supposed to go over here? Yeah, a few seconds of that is, oh, look at him! Look at this doddering old man! He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not all there. And then you have Trump. And Trump, who goes on a scree about Nikki Haley being responsible for January 6th, responsible for the security of January 6th. Nikki Haley called him out on that. And he says she didn't even know. She wasn't even in office. She wasn't there. And she called him out on that because she's already made the criticism about Biden, about his decline. So she made the same really logical assertion of Trump. And of course, the Trump minions will ignore this. Well, there was a clip that I saw about Hannity. Hannity on his show, they always have to have that one liberal, to be fair and balanced, on his show, where he asked her about Biden's cognitive dissonance, about his cognitive decline. Yeah, the balls to do that when she goes, Trump, what happened with Trump just now? And as soon as she can't even get a sentence out because Hannity and then the other guest and the other guest tries to shout her down because they wanted to talk about Biden's cognitive decline and not Trump's cognitive decline. There's only one cognitive decline. Trump just made mistakes. That's okay. That's one, two, three times. Come on. It was more than one to two or three times. There was times during him being president where he forgot the names of the people around him, so the guy who is a representative of Apple, he says, "Oh, what do you think, Mr. Apple?" He was in cognitive decline then, and that was years ago. This is not better now. But as I said, the problem, of course, is that no matter what criticism Nikki Haley is going to level onto Trump, no matter, when she finally bows out, she says she's going to support him. So the weakness, the problem with Trump being president, that was one of the reasons why she was running for president, that's going to go away as she's going to go and stand up while he, in the background, like the puppet master, will be standing there while she says nice things about him, like Tim Scott did, like Vivek did. So all that stuff that she says now does not matter, even if she believes it, because partisan necessities of party. And this is the subject of this video. This is not about Trump. This is not an anti-Trump video. especially in terms of his cognitive decline. Because I posted this on Middle America, which is a social group my buddy Vin runs that I'm fortunate to be an admin of. So I'm able to voice my opinions out there in Middle America. That his decline is real, and as much as a Trump critic who's suffering from Trump derangement syndrome is not funny. It is not funny. And it's not a matter of it's not funny because he's trying to run for president again, to become president. It is not funny that people around him that can see his cognitive decline still wants him to be president for the sake of their own ambitions and the partisan, pathetic, craven, partisan preference of party over country. You all go after Biden for his showing of decline, and you show no mercy to him. Trump is showing you can't dispute, even if you dare try, you can't dispute that Trump's decline is not worse than Biden's. And it is a sick, sad statement of affairs that we have to have this, one cognitive decline is not as severe as this other cognitive decline in two people who are, one's a president, one's a former president, and they're running for president. We are at this point in our country that not only that is our choice, that is the hand that we are dealt, but that is the hand that people are volunteering to be dealt. I've been thinking about this a lot, that the United States is a country full of contradictions in terms of what our ideals are, contrasting to what our reality is, what the reality of our history, of our legacy is, compared to what we think the United States is the other way. And how we're so gosh darn great that we're the best of the best in the world. That in certain ways, our coming together in our government is almost divine intervention. The product of what had happened for Europe and the other parts of the world for centuries, culminating into what we created in the United States when we rebelled and had our revolution against the parent stem of our colonies, which was Great Britain. And what we forged in ourselves, in our government, that was unique at the time. So we have a whole lot of ideals that we have about our country, and a whole lot of reality that contradicts that. But despite all that, beside a lot of realities here, we still want to hold, at least at some point, we want to hold at least some ideal of our country, of the greatness of our country. But how great is our country where we cannot even make the sacrifices that we think our ideals would demand us to? It is not funny to see Donald Trump lose his train of thought far worse than Biden. It's not funny when Biden does it. When he was running for president and as president, that is supposed to be scary. And I'm going to say the sad part out loud, that Biden's decline where he's at isn't as pronounced as where Trump is. But the system of people around Trump who are the same people who will prop him up saying what a strong guy he is, and all these other accolades and accomplishments, and how wonderful he is, and then whatever policies he's had is so great. You know, they. I've said this multiple times during his presidency, how it isn't just Donald Trump in a vacuum. It's the people around him that prop him up, that prop up his perceptional reality, so that it can be the reality that they broadcast out. But that reality isn't actually reality. It is what you want you to believe. So the perceptional reality here is that people are going out there and saying, "Oh well, Donald Trump was just joking. Oh, Donald Trump was just being sarcastic when he said Nikki Haley and not Nancy Pelosi was responsible for the security of January 6th." He yeah, if you watch that, it's Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley was responsible for the security of January 6th. He said this multiple times. You can see that there was the track of thinking just wavered and then fell off the hill, fell off the road. And it's not just that. I mean, it's like it became obvious to certain people. It became obvious to Governor Sununu, who had to spar with this Fox host who is a Trump Trump media talking head. Talking head. There you go. Where not John Sununu, but Chris Sununu. Talked about about what Trump was saying, what was saying, and when he talked about near 80, Trump being near 80, and she had to correct him, saying he's 77. That's how bad that is. That somebody has to try to defend Trump's age when the guy said he's near 80. She says he's 77, which is in fact near 80. I think she ended their discussion with Trump because she was taken aback at how he was being so anti-Trump in this. So he says, "Well, I'd like to see you debate him," and Sununu says, "Well, I would love for him to debate. I would pay for him to debate me, but he's too much of a coward." And she says, "No name calling." And he goes, "What? He's a coward for not debating." And then she ended the video. She ended the interview right there. The same goes with It is that way where it's like, hey, no, don't look at that over there. Don't look at Trump over there. Look at this. Look at Biden. Look at the decline of Biden. No, this is very sick. This is very sad. This is not funny that Donald Trump goes out on stage on any of the speeches, and if he's not on a really ironclad script, which he never is, he's going to wander off aimlessly into wherever his thoughts go, and just veers off here, veers off there. Powerful death penalty. What? It is the subject of this is how we are so desperately partisan, politically tribal, if that's even a term here, that we will prop up people who was clearly not well, clearly not in the proper position to be in such a high office. But we can't sacrifice that person for somebody better suited, someone better quality, better than, I say, younger, or at least mentally capable. It's not as if Donald Trump doesn't know what it's like to be president. we have seen outsiders' view looking into a presidency. We have been given the insider show of how you go to become president, you hit the ground running. The phones, as soon as you walk into that Oval Office, as soon as you are president, the phone starts ringing, and it doesn't stop ringing for 4 years. Donald Trump, probably the only presidency, at least in my middle-aged memory, that avoided such responsibilities by having executive time for hours, while every other president, started early and ended late on the phone, actually making deals, actually doing shit. I have to remind you, for those who are so amped on having Donald Trump back in the presidency, that he really didn't do much as a president. He didn't. Oh, sure, he talked tough. Talked tough on his social medias that was so gosh darn important that the news organizations have to talk about. That oh, let's see what Donald Trump was tweeting about there, or with this over there. Yeah, he loved the fact that everyone had to hang on his every word. Pardon, I'm having a hair issue. But outside of the talk and the name calling and the nicknaming, he didn't lead on any issue. He wasn't proactive on anything other than doing his best to destroy whatever Obama did before him. Like going after regulations that prevented poor industrial companies to not be able to dump their toxic waste byproduct bullshit into local streams. We have to stop that. We have to give them that. Or anything else to try to destroy Obama's legacy, or take credit for things that happened under Obama's watch, like openings of factories or military measures that were actually done under Obama. He'll take credit for it because he's an asshole. But beyond that, he never led on any major issue that had nothing to do with Obamacare or anything else, like the gun issues. He'll talk tough about bump stocks, and he will do a famous on camera says, "You're all afraid of the NRA," but then he fades in the background, like in any issue with gun control. He'll fade in the background. Any major issue concerning the economy or nearly or shutting down the government, it says oh, I'm going to talk tough now, but then I'm going to leave it to you. You guys deal with it. I'll be over here, and then I'll just criticize you if you can't get it done, because I'm not getting involved in this. I don't want the responsibility. He didn't want the responsibility. He never did. And that was him between 2016 and 2020, where whatever measurable decline he was at then, it is now worse now, and you don't have to be a doctor to see it. We all see it. And these people around him make excuses for him on this. People can call me an ageist. That's fine. In terms of the presidency of the United States, yeah, I think there should be an upper age cap. This should not be the position of a figurehead. And somehow now the presidency of the United States may as well be a figurehead position where it's just it's just that. It's just you just put someone there who's famous or a celebrity or an old school politician, and he will be there, he'll handshake, he will do the ceremonies, yay, and then the rest of the government will move around him. No, in our system of our checks and balances of three equally powered branches of government, the executive is supposed to be as viable and as active as the legislative and the judicial. And you're going to have Donald Trump here to be president again. And where he is in his decline now, which will only get worse, who will need probably half of his day being executive time, and only get him into the office to actually do some kind of work with like hand puppets, or making sure you have enough sycophants around him glad-handing him and trying to steer him into one direction or another while praising him, because that's the only way people listen. He'll listen to anybody. What does that say about us that we would subject these leaders through? What does that say about us? And we have to, and again, let's balance the books a bit here, because as much as we can justly present this about Donald Trump, we have to say the same problem is both a Democrat and Republican problem, and I'm not just talking about Joe Biden. We have a problem in our current state of politics that we are so desperate to maintain our controls of whatever, of this illusion of power, that we would allow people, that we would force people to make the decision to stay in power, to stay in their political positions, when they're way past the time that they are adequately suitable or viable to be in those positions. In terms of the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a great judge, revolutionary judge, for her time going up, she felt the need, because of what would happen if she was not in the court, to try to stay in that court as long as she could, past the obvious prime, past the obvious past due timing of her own physical capabilities of coming in and out of hospitals, to stay in the judgeship for fear of what would happen if she wasn't there. And unfortunately for her and for the country, for certain segments of the country who believes in certain rights that are no longer in existence, or will no longer be in existence on a national level, she rolled the dice and it came up snake eyes. And she fell at a time when her replacement can be from the other side. For the sake of holding on to senatorial majority, the same could be said for Dianne Feinstein, who was past her prime, past the point of her being viable for her position, that people gleefully pointed out her decline, both physically and mentally, because we are so compassionate Christians, aren't we? But because of that need to hold on to power for our political parties, we subject our people that we're supposed to feel beloved and beholden to keep them there, when in reality they should be resting on their laurels of their golden years and having their legacies. People talk about there should be term limits, and I agree with that. It is an interesting fact that Joe Biden started his national career being the youngest senator, and now he's the oldest president. Think about that span of time for that to be the case. Donald Trump, if he didn't ever run for president, would be remembered with a kind of roguish fondness, for he would be a representation of the go-go 80s, of someone who lived the life of wealth, flaunted it in such a public manner that he became an iconic representation of a decade. Now they have fallen. But the problem is, they have fallen into power. And people are putting their stock, they're hitching their political stars to these people. Whether they admit to it or not, they are suffering from their decline. And shame on us, all of us, for putting them and keeping them into that position. I don't have too many positive things to say about Nikki Haley. Not that I have any Trump-level dislike of her or anything. She was a Trump official. She lived and worked through the Trump presidential administration. She should know better. But on the stage of the people that she was with, she looked the most presidential. And she's not going to get a chance at this. I've said this the last few days, and I'm going to continue to say it now because I am one of these broken records. So long as Trump is not on the debate stage with Nikki Haley, where they can have this face-to-face, back and forth, Nikki Haley's candidacy to be the nominee is meaningless. As it was for Ron DeSantis, as it was for Vivek Ramaswamy, as it was for Tim Scott and Chris Christie. It is meaningless so long as Trump is not there. Because outside of us political wonks that are concentrating on this day to day, everyone else is, as long as they're not seeing Trump there, they're not going to take these people seriously. They're not going to take Nikki Haley seriously. The people who are voting for Nikki Haley do so because they do not want to vote for Trump. But the majority of the people who are voting, like in Iowa, Trump barely campaigned. It didn't matter. People were going to vote for him anyway. Same sort of folk who either are diehard Trump fans or are people who are not politically, as aware, not politically woke, that they don't really care that whatever Trump did as president or didn't do as president or was as hands-on as president or was responsible as president. He has an R by his name. He is the most famous R by his name. They kind of hear all these other politicians have rallied around him. So Just vote for him. That's fine. He's Republican. What could go wrong? As somebody who loves the sport of politics and how dramatic we are getting in our politics, there is so much more to this world than politics. And there is something to be said about the fatigue. It is exhausting having to deal with this in a day in and day out, where people will cry tears of blood, be outraged at some policy of something that's happening in our reality now that seems to be the doomsday of this country. Let's talk about an example of like our southern border. How people will blame a president, a individual president, for what's going on now at the border, and declare that he's doing nothing, that this is his border issue, this is all his fault. But if that president happens to come up with some form of anything resembling some form of solution, or at least something that helps, like Biden's emergency $14 billion package that could pay for asylum judges, that would pay for new border guards, new technologies for the border security, or maybe some form of wall that y'all were whining about during the Trump years. Oh, but we don't want any of that. No. We don't want any of that. And why? Oh, we get some answers why. In terms of one of the reasons why, which was discussed on Laura Ingram's, was talking to Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House now, how Trump told her that he told Mike Johnson to bag the Biden deal for the border. And why? Because he doesn't want the border to be improved during an election year. He doesn't want Biden to get a win. The Republicans don't want Biden to get a win on the border. Fuck you, people. Seriously, for God fucking sake. If you are so gung-ho about the border being a nightmare, how people are just flooding over, that fentanyl is just flowing in like a river into this country, but you refuse anything that to help coming from Biden, then it's not a big issue for you. This is political apathy. It is seeing that something is wrong and not caring about it for the sake of politics. This is not something I've not seen before, because I saw this during the Obama administration. As I mentioned, over the American Jobs Bill, where the Republicans declined that and denied that, while at the same time asking Obama, where's the jobs? Because they don't give a shit about you. These political people, these Republicans, who say they're out there representing you, they will put on people who are victims of crime, victims who have seen loved ones die because of some illegal immigrant. They'll bring them before Congress to shame Democrats, but when there's a bill for emergency funding to help with the border, you say fucking no. Because you do not want a solution. You want the problem. And that is the issue that I always see. No matter what it is. Border. Reproductive rights. Abortion. LGBTQ rights. Racial issues. Anything. Criminal justice. Domestic. Anything. You want the problem so you can bitch and moan about the problem, but you do not want a solution for fear of they might get a win. If we had problems that could have been solved under the Trump administration, that Trump could have supported and championed, that had nothing to do with just build a wall and nothing else. If there was something more than a wall, if there's something was like hiring immigration lawyers, immigration judges in order to facilitate those who are actually immigrating here, and dealing with the migrants as human beings as opposed to throwing them into cages, that, was built by Obama. Because we have to preface that because we want those people to cry when we discuss it's only Trump. A reminder to everybody, left and right, that the last time this country was ever serious about the border, about comprehensive immigration reform, was in the early 90s. This is 30 years, folks. This is not a Biden problem. This has been not a Trump problem. This is not an Obama problem. This has been a problem that's been going on for 30 fucking years. That people have been kicking the can down the road for 30 years. They talk about how people care about it now. They haven't cared in 30 years. They only care when it's a viable political football that they use and kick to the other side. These are the same type of people that want someone who's so severely cognitively in decline to be their figurehead because their political fortunes rest on him because he has a fan base that is so gosh darn entertained by him that they can't make the sacrifice for their country and realize that he should step aside, that he should be disqualified for not only for whatever decline he has, for his actions on January 6th, that his actions of trying to put in fake judges, or not fake judges, fake electors, to try to subvert the actual results of the election, which he said was a fraud, going back to July of 2020, before there was even an election day. But no, let's keep this guy in office. The guy who incited people to march onto the Capitol and break in to stop a certification vote. Which again, for the people who are coming out with these new videos and coming out with this new latest revisionist history of January 6th, that's just, this is what really happened. No, this is what really happened. This is the real fraud here. No. Us who saw this live in real time, we know what actually happened because we saw it in real time that it was happening. There was no media melodrama. There was no cabal. There's no conspiracy. They pushed themselves through the barricades. Some of those cops who pulled the barricades aside, they were out fucking numbered. If they were so invited in, why did they break the doors in? Why did they break the windows in? And he cited all that. And the very few irrefutable facts, like him not calling the National Guard, even though they're trying to say, Nancy Pelosi could have had 10,000 troops, but she didn't want that. Yeah, because the National Guard could not be called now for an event that happens now. Oh, no. Oh, since that wasn't wanted days ago, we're not going to call that because that was on her. Fuck you, people. Seriously, Jesus Christ, guys. But the best part about that on January 6th for this unqualified, disqualified piece of shit who was president at the time, once he told them to go home, they went home. If he actually cared, actually was responsible, if he actually did not want this to happen, he could have told them to go home the moment the first barricade was pushed by, the moment the first window was broken, the first police officer was assaulted, the first door broken into, before they walked into those hallways, hunting for congressmen and senators and the vice president of the United States. They were reading his tweet about Mike Pence, revving up the crowd to continue in. And there has to remain reminded of the crowbar separation between Trump supporters behind the barricade protesting, as is their right to protest. They are cool. They did nothing wrong. To those who broke in and went in by his word and left by his word. That is why he's disqualified. But that doesn't matter, does it? That doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter, because this is about the political, partisan, tribalism bullshit where it's party over country. Party over country so bad that a person in such visible, obvious cognitive decline has to still be propped up to be your golden calf for your worship. So he has to be your leader. Even though you saw how ineffectual he was as president then, you want him back now. Because it's party over country. You don't dare want the other side to have any power. And in this time, it's such sharp political divides, where our numbers, no matter how many elections we have, we can't seem to have a robust enough side on both houses of Congress. So nothing gets done. So you can continue to have your problems that you can whine about and campaign about and demonize the other side about, because you can't quite pass anything to stop it, nor do you really want to. As I said, a $14 billion package was help with the border. Not everything. It's not a major solution, but it was a start. They don't even want to start. They don't want anything to improve at the border, because that is something to complain about, something to point at Biden and say, that's your fault. They don't want anything to improve the economy. They don't want to even mention how the economy is doing far better. They want to keep mentioning about inflation when inflation is kind of doing this thing right here. They don't want to talk. They certainly don't want to talk about job numbers when joblessness is doing this thing right here, and the jobs are doing this thing right here. They don't want to talk about the stock market, is up here, that set record levels yesterday morning. They don't want to talk about that. Trump made it obvious that he didn't want to be Herbert Hoover. He wants the economy to crash now so that he can waltz in, so he can be president. So it can be Biden's fault that the economy crashes. You know, as a Trump critic, I didn't blame Trump for the economy. I am one of these people that happen to believe that a singular president, can't be the credit or the blame for the economy going up and down. There has to be so many other factors goes involved in it. Just because you happen to be squatting in a chair at an administrative level doesn't mean that everything that happens during that time is all because of you. So I never really bought into that. That's a little bit more demagoguery of what a president is responsible or what is capable of. It's like, people would blame President Biden over crime. It's like, what is he doing? Like the borders. Like, what is he doing? And in terms of the border, especially with Texas, where I think I heard that they threw out the feds in Eagle Pass so that Texas now controls Eagle Pass. There was one horror. I have to read about it. I have to read about it in more detail. There was one story that I heard that the Texas officials blocked federal officials from saving a woman, a mother, and her children from drowning in the river because they were trying to cross the border. They blocked them from saving them. And the excuse of them doing so was, oh, they were already dead. What do they not want the feds to do or see when they control this border crossing? Think about that, because Greg Abbott recently says that, if we're doing everything except shooting people at the border, because we know if we shot people crossing the border, then President Biden might have us charged with murder. First of all, presidents don't charge people with murder, and on the other part, yeah, it is murder. But if that's what you want to do, and this is why you want feds not around, because there's the question, what would they want to do which they are not doing now? Could it be shooting people at the border? These good, fine Christian folk? Could that be it? Are you at that point? I'm sure a lot of people will be vocal and be like so eager to do so. I mean, this is... Talk about some people's enthusiasm to kill people and to dehumanize people, not even consider them people. They're so eager to just have people drown as they're trying to clutch onto razor wire over the Rio Grande. It reminds me of the actors in the movie Conspiracy, which was about all the heads of the Nazis discussing the final solution, how dehumanizing that was. How one of these Nazi officials goes, "Why can't you just shoot them?" And the other guy and the other people, because there were many shades of evil in that meeting, and this one guy was chaotic evil, says, "Why can't you shoot them?" And it's, no, you can't. We can't shoot them. Do you want to shoot them? Enthusiastically. If you gave me a gun, I'd shoot them all, men, women, and children. And Heinrich, the head of the meeting, who was probably the coldest evil of them all, says, "No, you can't do it. It's asinine to do that. You can't ask them to do that because that's women and that's children." This is the same person that wants them to go into a bathroom or a tiled room to get gassed to death. But he recognizes the horror it would be for asking troops to shoot people. But gassing them, oh, that's okay. This is reminding me of that. What do they not want the feds to see them do to these people trying to cross the border? This is a byproduct of not wanting to do anything about the border, just for the sake of politics. You're not going to get any serious anything happening at the border so long as people who are not serious upon there being a solution is in a position to deny anything to happen. And you cannot have one solution for the border. You can't just have a wall, because walls do nothing. What little Trump was able to get to do with the border in terms of border security before the border barriers, for 4 years, he only did a handful of miles of a border wall. And famously, a piece of that border wall, boom, went down. I mentioned this before, and I forget the figures, but I mentioned this in previous videos, how Trump had gotten money for border security, including the building of a barrier in one of these congressional funding for the border. He was given a lovely sum of money to be put in, dedicated for border security. Magically, only 6% of that money went to it. Where did the rest of the money go? Because it didn't go to the border. It didn't go to making a wall. Alright, another hour. Okay. Alright, I'm getting off. I've already gotten off the beaten path here. But, which is funny because Trump is off the beaten path. He doesn't even have breadcrumbs to make his way home. Even as I make that joke. His cognitive decline is not funny. It's not funny on a national level, in terms of our politics, or what it means for our country if he becomes president again. For all the reasons of what he has done while he was not president, whining, bitching, moaning, complaining, and inciting riots to him to try to keep a grip of power, why he doesn't deserve to be president again. If he becomes president again, then none of this matters. None of our rule of law matters. He's going to bring law and order back. Fuck you, people. Law and order back. It's ridiculous. None of this is going to matter. I'm not going to be so dramatic that the democracy dies. I don't have to say that either. Because at this point, if you're not following along, if you don't see the problem with someone who incited a group of his ardent supporters for weeks and a month prior to come to the day of certification, rev them up to break into the Capitol to stop a certification vote in order to keep himself in power, and you don't see anything wrong with that, and you vote him back in, none of this matters. And you don't give a shit about this country. You give a shit about winning. You don't care what he does as president. Hey, as long as my team is in there, that's fine. Whatever they do is fine. It's my team. Fuck them libs. That's it. That's all that is. I don't want to hear anything more about, the love of country. Waving a flag around or putting a flag behind your social media avatar doesn't make you love this country, because loving this country requires you to love the American people. And unless the American people thinks the same way you do, acts the same way you do, talks the same way you do, believes the same way you do, then you don't love them. They're your enemy. You've made that clear. That goes beyond just pure Democrats and liberals and progressives and all that. We're seeing that. We see that last night. We saw that last night amongst the most ardent Trump supporters, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said that they should have a Trump purity test for all Republicans, that those who are not completely MAGA should be eradicated from the party. Trump himself said that people who do not vote for him should be eradicated from their party. That it should be not the GOP, it should be the TOP. Not the grand old party, the Trump old party. To love this country is to acknowledge and respect everybody in the country, whether they believe the same thing as you do or not. If you're a Republican, you are conservative, or evangelical, should be an equal footing and be respected, no different than a liberal, Democrat, believer or disbeliever This tribalism has to stop, because it will destroy us as a country. It has already begun. It's already started. It started before Trump, and it just keeps getting worse because it is addictive to be in the midst of such political righteous hate. It is a drug that is in your veins that you just keep getting those hits, and you just keep feeling that euphoria when you see one of your talking heads saying something that is so outlandish that 20, 30 years ago people would be shocked at, and they would want them to be kicked out of politics, rightfully. But no, you'll keep getting those hits for your tribe. People act like French revolutionaries that, just want their side to win so bad because they just want to see the other side get guillotined. Well, the thing about the French Revolution is that, yeah, it was all fun and games when you were taking out the French aristocracy and you were beheading the kings and queens. But then you had no plans for the country afterwards, did they? And then Napoleon came around. And Napoleon, like Trump, as a populist, used them. Used their disagreements, used their needs, and fanned the flames. Pretended to be on their side. And then he became emperor. That doesn't sound any similar? That doesn't sound familiar to the current state of affairs? Do they have people here that would want to see this country burn? Doesn't know or doesn't care what happens to the country afterwards? And who's going to come along once again to take advantage of it? And at worst, who is going to come along to take advantage of it? Who's no longer able to utter a coherent sentence? Who can't make himself make sense? Who cannot act like he is 77 years old, he's a mature man, but talks about how things are unfair, like he's a pouting child. That's your symbol of strength. Ranter rants because you keep giving me reasons to rant. But political fatigue is real. And even I have my limits. I want to still have the ideals for this country. That, how people who are not loud, who are not flailing, who are in the background in multiples of millions, who had the common sense last election to come back for this election to do the same thing as 2020. Because if we don't, we are stepping one more step into the fall of the American Empire, as the Romans did. But the difference between when Nero played his fiddle as Rome burned, perhaps our soon-to-be president will be playing on his Twitter while his country burns. And this time around, he won't even know how to spell. Delightful thoughts.